Somewhere internally, I just had this strong feeling that came from somewhere deep inside of me that just said, well, life doesn't have to be this way. And there's an infinite potential for it.
I didn't then, and a lot of people these days don't spend any time on their minds.
Hey everybody, welcome to Get Real. It's a podcast about living your greatest life. I'm Sridhar, I'm here with Cam Bailey. And Cameron, do you want to tell us today what we're getting real about?
Yeah, we've talked about lots of things today. We've talked about suicide, we've talked about anxiety, we've talked about wealth and creating wealth, and we've also talked about living your most authentic life. So we've got heaps packed into this episode, and we'd love, like always, some questions about it.
What's happening in your world at the moment?
Yeah, we're really busy. We're on the busy rush into the Christmas break now. So real estate world, I'm super busy. But yeah, I've had an interesting week. I had a few big things happen this week. One of the top, I think the top real estate agent in Australia, his name's Matt Steinwade, and he's kind of like the me of Australia. And he's a really wonderful guy. He's into health and real estate and, you know, does podcasts and all this. His 20-year-old son actually committed suicide this week. And it's sort of everyone in the real estate world has been talking about it because he's quite a famous real estate agent. And I think I've had a lot of talk to me about, you know, anxiety, depression, suicide, all those sort of things this week. So that's been sort of like right on my mind. I just wondered what your thoughts on that and anxiety. Do you have many people come to you and talk about anxiety and depression, and have you had much to do with this?
Yeah, Cameron, I mean, it's a big thing. I think a lot of people, people come to me often when they have challenges. So not just that, but that's something I deal with quite frequently in my work. And one of the things people deal with is anxiety. There's just, we live in a sense, an anxiety-filled world. We're getting messages every day about, if you turn on your TV, it's what you should be anxious about. You turn on your radio, social media, everything's about what you should be anxious about. And there's, things are speeding up. Like it's life is speeding up. Everything is getting faster. And one of the responses of that is certainly anxiety. We certainly in today's world, we've got a lot of opportunities that, I didn't have when I was a kid. Technology has made a lot of things available. We learn and grow much faster.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that comes with a tremendous amount of anxiety, a lot of pressures.
So how do you describe anxiety? What is it?
Well, I might have a little bit of a different definition, but for me, anxiety is really just how we respond to the thoughts that are going on in our minds. And that can either be we're consciously aware of that. Yeah. A lot of the anxiety comes from what we're worried about, but we don't know necessarily that we're worried about it. Yeah. This is a real tricky thing about anxiety, because often people will come and say, I just feel really anxious. And it takes something to actually get to what's actually going on in your, that's causing you to be anxious, what's going on in your world. So anxiety is one of those things that people feel, but it can be quite elusive because we may not pinpoint what's actually causing us to feel anxious. And then we don't feel like we can share it with other people. So we wear it within. We don't feel like, I don't want to burden anyone, or, I might be embarrassed if I tell people I'm not on top of it, because, our world is all about, who can seem like they're on top of it the most. And so we just quietly wear it. We don't talk about it. And unfortunately, if we don't, do something about it, it can lead to all sorts of things. Unfortunately, even suicide at the end, when people just don't feel like there's anywhere else to go. That's the only way out. It's really unfortunate because, as you know, with the work that we do, there's a way out of that. Like there's, if we can understand what we're thinking and be able to turn that around, then we find that the anxiety can go. So that is something that, I've seen quite a lot of. I've also seen that it's possible to come out of that, but
I feel anxiety is sort of like not living in the present. It's like focusing on either the past or the future, and it's focusing on the worst possible thing. Yeah. So, as you said before, like most of what people are anxious about is never going to happen. So they're focusing on the wrong things, and it becomes all-consuming, basically. I've known people that get really anxious and they almost can't leave the house because they're so worried about something. Yeah. And it's something that you need to overcome. And I think that when I was young, we didn't talk about these sort of things. And now it's become a thing that we talk about and we're aware of it. And I think it's great because we can deal with it. And even talking to my kids, they're aware of anxiety and they're aware of depression and suicide and all these sort of things. And, I think that it's out there that we can talk about. It's wonderful. But it's a big thing. I know lots of people that deal with anxiety and depression, and it seems to be really big out there at the moment. And I think there's a lot of things happening at the moment in the world that kind of make us more anxious. We've had COVID to deal with. We've got financial things happening with interest rates going up. It's making people nervous about the economy and about life and how they pay the bills and things like that. It's really crazy. I had a really, really good friend of mine, and she's working for a company, but also has her own business. And she was made redundant this week because the company that she was working for was struggling financially. And she went straight to the worst possible situation of her life, basically. She's going to run out of money. How's she going to live? How's she going to pay the bills? Quite fearful. Yeah. And then she got really anxious about the whole thing, and she couldn't see a way out of it. She came around, had a bit of a talk to us, and we've sort of worked through it. But it's amazing how people handle these crisis situations, don't they? When they haven't done the work.
They don't really deal with reality. They deal with what's, as you say, what's going on in the mind.
Yeah.
Just like the other day, I looked at and I just made sure I don't. I'm not exposed to this anymore. But this article that comes out that says AI is going to take everyone's job away. This is top experts say, and I'm saying it's rubbish, right? If you look at any time there's a transition in life, we're able to handle it, right? Are there changes? There are big changes going on at the moment, but it's just the stuff that we get filled with, and it's what you've said. It's the mind going to the worst scenario and acting as if that's the one that's going to happen. So with with the person that if I think you said if she really thinks about it, she's been fine. There's been other things in her life that have happened like that. There's been other tough times for us all. We get through it. And the real reality of it is we're going to be okay, right? That's the reality. That's what's so tragic. When people come to me, and some of the times people come to me, it's because someone in their family has committed suicide and they're struggling with it, or they're, I've found out people come to me and say they're depressed. And then later I find out it was more depressed than I possibly knew, because they said, hey, look, and it was more than that for them. And it's like, if you think about it, it will be okay. And that to me is that's the ultimate, end, because there's no coming back from that. And it's like, you'll be okay. You've been okay through other things. There's some things that you need to look at and things that you need to do, instead of just get lost in that world of living in the fantasy of that the worst thing is going to happen. I know it because I did it for so many years, that was one of my stories, is always going to the worst thing that was going to happen. But it doesn't happen. Most often it doesn't happen. And if we look at those times, one of the things I say, Cameron, to people is, if I'll say, well, how old are you, right? And they'll tell me their age, and I'll say, because if they're going through challenge and feel like they're not going to get through it, I say, well, how old are you now? Again, 40, 44. 44. And I'll say, okay, in 44 years, have you been through other things before where you thought the worst was going to happen, or something really bad was going to happen to you? And I said, are you still okay? And I'm like, here you are in this moment of time, which you alluded to earlier. You're in this moment of time. This is the sum total of your life right here and now. Are you okay right now? And they'll go, yeah, I'm okay right now. So think about all the time we spend worrying. Think about all the time we spend, dramatizing the worst that's going to happen to us, and living that. But yet, time and time again, here we are, we make it through, and most often we come out better. And that's why it really, I always think when I hear these stories, and you really feel for the families that are left, with like a parent that has to go through that, is unimaginable. But you think but sometimes people don't say anything about it. You don't know. And so,
well, that's that. I mean, I think as soon as she came around and talked to us, we were able to dissect it and put some reality around it. But I think, and then, within an hour or so of talking, I could just feel like the weight lifted from her shoulders, and she knew that she was going to be okay. But there was a time there when I was talking to her on the phone initially that I thought, shit, this is a bit bad, and I didn't even really know what was going on because she was crying so much on the phone. the number one thing to do is talk to people, and that's probably really, really, really hard to do. But as soon as you start talking to people, then you start to realize it's not as bad as what you think. It's such an important thing to be able to talk to people. But you're right, it's never as bad as what you think, and more often than not, good will come from it. Because we'd actually turn the whole conversation around to say, well, look, hey, maybe this is a sign that, you are meant to be working for yourself the whole time rather than working for someone else. And, we started to talk about contacts and what she can do. And because I think that's the whole thing. I mean, what do you do? When you're at your lowest, thinking about where your options are is the best possible thing you can do, I think. I mean, because everyone's got so many options and people that they know and phone calls that they can make and, favors they can call on, but they don't think it because they can't see it, because they're acting from an emotion of fear, and they can't see anything.
Well, that, for me, Cameron, that's the first step. Like when we're in that position, when I'm in that position or when I see anybody in that position, the first thing is to get the mind right. Yeah. Like it's, because if we're trying to find the answers from that fear position, it's a panic reaction. If you think about, because the mind, what I know in my studies of the mind is that when we have these things, we actually think they're real. We think that we're actually living in that reality as if it's happening when it isn't.
Yeah.
And then the reaction is panic and fear, and we don't make good decisions out of that. So I say to people, okay, if it's finding a friend that knows how to help you get into the right mind state, or I work with techniques so how to get yourself in the right mind state. For me, the platform, like, where are you starting from? And one of the things I do every single day, where am I starting from today? Where is my mind? Is it, taking me down a path I don't want to go? Is it with me today? Am I aligned? Am I seeing hope and opportunity, or am I seeing doom and gloom and fear and etc.? And if I'm seeing that doom and gloom, it's the first thing I do before I make any decisions, before I go, what's the next move? You get into the mind state. It's like that. If you know that when you're in that mind state, you're in the flow, opportunities will come, right? Like you get back in that state where you're creative again, and you, as you say, then you go.
Isn't it?
We talk about frequency.
We talked about that last time, and it all comes your way. And we talked about her last 6 months in her career, and she was trying to set her own business up, and it was going really well, but the financial rewards weren't coming in, so it was getting tough. So then she took a job on just to give her a bit of supplementary income, and to me, that was probably the soft thing to do. We talked about it last night, the easiest path is not the best path. The hardest path is the one you should be taking, but everyone's fearful of it. So she took a softer path because it gave her a bit of short-term relief. But I think this is just showing her that it's actually the wrong path. And it's the universe working for her, basically, because by the time we dissected it, she was really pumped up about working for herself and throwing herself back into her own business and being the master of her own destiny and creating wealth and building a business and building contacts around her. And that was really what business is about. Nothing to do with making money, because when it was losing your job, it was all about losing money, not having enough money. But when it was building a business, it's all about building a brand and building a business around you, and the money will come. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was really relevant to me as well. But I think that showed me, like, I've actually had 2 people talk to me this week about suicide and family members in their household suicide or trying to commit suicide. And then suddenly Matt Steinwade's son killed himself last weekend, which was just terrible. I looked at his Instagram page. He's a 20-year-old, really attractive boy. Matt's a bit of a real estate guru and life guru, a bit like you. He does a lot of mental stuff. He does a lot of coaching online for people's well-being. And it kind of blew me away that his son could get into that position with a father like him.
Yeah, well, let's bring something up. For me, Cameron, is really something that's big in my work. As we've talked about many times, I work with quite a lot of successful people, really, present company obviously included very, very highly successful people. And, it's something that you and I have discussed here in a previous session as well, but it's all important that, all the stuff, like we're just on this train, like everywhere we turn, you've got to be successful. You've got to look a certain way. You've got to make a certain amount of money. You have to be a certain kind of smart. So we're constantly trying to live up to these things. Mm-hmm. And in the end of the day, this is why, have anything I want to scream from from somewhere, from a hillside or whatever, is, at the end of the day, we find that that stuff didn't fulfill us. And I'm not saying I'm against. I love the pursuit of these things. Like I love the pursuit of wealth and business success and all these things, but it's crossing the line when we make it mean something about us, and that's what's leading people to these states of anxiety and depression. And it's like, at the end of the day, go for all of those things, is what I say, but just understand that they're not going to fulfill you at the end of the day. You've got to be fulfilled on the inside, and that's the real thing. And so this is why we see these people, these famous people. I think about, if you think about Hollywood, is the place that I think about a lot. These people are the best looking. They're meant to be the best looking on the planet. They've got the most money. They've got the houses. They've got the fame. They've got the fortune. They've got the admiration. They have everything, but they also have suicides. They have the massive amounts of drug and alcohol addiction. They have, completely dysfunctional relationships.
From Friends, he was last week, so there's been a lot of talk of it. And
it's a good topic, really, for today, because you think he's got it all. He's a funny guy, and
successful, wealthy.
Yeah, he's not somebody I looked into until after he died, and then you find out he's been struggling with alcohol and drugs from 19 years old. And he's this time, because I thought, okay, this stuff just doesn't happen overnight, and he's been honest about it lately. Apparently, he wrote a book that talked about the struggles that they have. So. This is just something that nowadays, the persona that we create is so far removed from who we really are. I think that's why us doing this Get Real podcast means a lot to me, because the more that I see it, particularly with successful people, it's like we have to create this image, and the image gets farther and farther away. It can, like with Matt's son, the image, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the story, but, that image getting farther, and the things that you feel you have to live up to get farther from what you're really feeling inside. And sometimes that just becomes so far apart that, how do you deal with that? But if we just realize, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all seeking something. We all want to be happy. We have different ways to be able to do that. We're all going to fail sometimes. We're all going to, do well. We're human. We're fallible. Things, we're going to get older. Things are going to happen to our bodies at some point. This is the reality of life. And I think if we just accept all that and go, hey, we're actually human beings, then that can help us to not go there. But this is something I feel very, very strongly about, because 20-year-olds end up taking their life. And it's
one of the biggest beliefs out there is a belief that you're not good enough. Okay, I think everyone's got a little bit of belief about that, no matter who they are. And like, it's one of my beliefs. I'm not good enough, And I was actually talking to one of the guys in my office this week, and we were talking about this, and he actually couldn't believe that was one of my beliefs, because he looks at me and think, oh, that's Cameron Bailey, and he's this and he's that, and he couldn't believe that I ever thought that about myself. But the problem with social media and Instagram and Facebook these days is that we're bombarded by other people's what they think are successes, but they're just not true. So it's telling us every time we look at Instagram or every time we look at Facebook that we're not good enough, because we don't have the nice house, and we don't have the happy relationship, and we don't have the Lamborghini to drive down the road. The reality out there is that the people driving the Lamborghinis that can really afford them are the 1 or the 2%. But at the moment, there's 30% on there, that have got Lamborghinis, but they can't really afford them because they're up to their eyeballs. I'm listening to a book at the moment called The Psychology of Money, and it's about being rich and being wealthy and the difference between the two. And it gives examples of all these people like Warren Buffett, and there was this guy, I can't remember his name, that they talk about in the book, and he was, if you Wikipedia him, he's famous as a philanthropist, but he was only famous after he died, because he was a caretaker at a school, and he did all these sort of odds and sods jobs, but never did anything relevant while he was alive. But he amassed this massive wealth, $12 million or something like that. So when he died, and he was very frugal and didn't do anything with it, when he died, he gave like $9 million to whoever it was, some charity, and then he gave a couple of $1 million each to his children, and no one knew he had any of the money, but he became famous, and there was stories written about him and articles written about this guy because of the wealth that he created by himself and just been smart with it, really. So I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, the difference between somebody just quietly going about their way and that's just for some reason it reminds me. I was talking with one of my friends and somebody I work with who's a really, really super successful, again, very wealthy person. And he's also done work with me for a period of time. So he's done some of the mindset, questions about, the good parts of that and the challenging parts that can bring. I don't think wealth and money in and of itself isn't bad, but he was saying that he was talking about a biography, so I won't say who these are about, but he basically said, because he makes a habit like I do of reading successful people, and I'm sure we've talked about that you do. And so we talked about 4 people that everyone would know, and their biographies or autobiographies have been written, and it was really kind of blew me away because he said, I've noticed 2 things about these people other than they're wealthy and successful. And I'm saying this because you talked about the not good enough story. And what I can say from the years I've done this work is that just about everyone, I'm trying to think if there's an exception of a successful person in business that didn't start with that story. Because that's why we get driven to succeed, right? Is we don't feel good enough. So I'm going to get success and then I can be good enough. I'm going to get money and then I can be good enough. And I'm not saying there aren't any out there, but the vast majority that I've worked with, and no matter how successful, they become, that's where it started. And it's an issue because, as we know, Cameron, we've done a lot of work around that was never true, right? Like it was a story. But he said to me, he noticed 2 things about these people. And one was, other than they're successful, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because we admire these people. We want to be them. That's the thing. Well, I want to be them. And he said, he goes, I don't want to be them. And you're reminding me of this with your story of this guy that quietly went on building wealth. But he said they're tyrants. They're not likable people. And there was in the biography, like people don't like them. They're so fixated on what they want to do. They don't have care. They don't have, they don't see other people and how they fit. They're just so fixated on what they want. And he interestingly said, you can see the insecurity all through the story. He said they're some of the most insecure people that are there, and these are the most successful. And again, because of image or what's said about them, because we like to do that. We like to have heroes, right? And so we set that up. And so we look at these people and go, I want to be like them. But if you look behind the surface, we don't want to be like them. Okay, so who would say, hey, do you want everybody to not like you? Do you want to be alone in a corner, sitting with I'm not saying every successful person is this way, but it was interesting that this conversation was of 4 of the most successful business people that there have ever been. And it was really interesting. And then you hear about this. I love that. The difference between wealth and getting rich is, and I'm not saying, look, I'll say this, like it's not about we have to be quiet. It's that, are we attached to this stuff? Are we attached to adoration? Are we attached to admiration? Or are we attached to people thinking a certain way of us? Are we attached to people seeing us a certain way? That's when the issue comes about. But I love that story because if you just quietly build it up and it's like nobody would probably ever know, that person was doing that, and yet they get wealthy. So I guess what I'm hearing from you is there's a difference between those 2, wealthy and rich.
The corresponding story to that guy who quietly built wealth and built huge wealth was the other people out there and Warren Buffett, and Charlie, 2 of the wealthiest people in the world, billions and billions of dollars. There was actually a third one. So I think it was back in the 70s or the 80s, there was 3 of them building wealth. And one of them, I forget his name, was really highly leveraged. So in one of the big, deep recessions, he was so leveraged that he had to sell all his Berkshire shares, and Warren bought them. And the guy now has very little money, and he hasn't moved forward. So on the surface, he looked like he was super wealthy, but he was so highly leveraged that he actually wasn't wealthy. He was rich because he had cash flow and stuff coming in, but he wasn't wealthy. Because one of the descriptions of wealth in this book was that wealth is what you can't see. And I really like that because rich is cars and houses and cash flow, but that can disappear really quickly. Wealth's what people can't see behind you, where you've got options.
Say more about that. That's an interesting
Yeah,
construct.
it's a really interesting way to look at it, and because you don't know wealth. Wealth's like owning a commercial building around the corner that nobody knows about, and it's giving you income every day. There's that great line that Warren talks about, and wealth is creating money while you're sleeping. And that's what it is. So wealth's buying buildings, having shares, having investments that are working for you while you're not there. Whereas a lot of people don't have that. They can have a Lamborghini or they can have a Ferrari parked in the garage in their own house with a big mortgage, but they actually don't have any assets. So as soon as, and we're seeing this a little bit at the moment with higher interest rates in New Zealand have gone from 2.75 to 6 or 7% and going higher. So there's not a person in New Zealand at the moment that's not feeling the pinch of interest rates. Like everyone, even if you're a wealthy commercial landlord, you haven't got as much money washing around because the banks are taking a lot more. So finance and wealth is really relevant at the moment. I'm selling a lot of houses for people who aren't under financial pressure, but they're actually feeling the pinch a little bit more and it's starting to affect their lifestyle. And the smart ones are getting in and doing something about it early rather than waiting till it's too late.
I've got. Do you want to know my definition of wealth?
Tell me.
My definition of wealth is how stressed are you no matter what's going on. In regards to money, how stressed are you? So can you go through a time of 8% interest rates, 7-8% interest rates, and not be stressed? That means that I think we're saying the same thing, maybe, but from a different perspective. It's that if you can say, yes, I'm not stressed, it means you have that. It means that you've organized your money in such a way. Because look, if you just look at it, for how many hundreds, thousands of years have interest rates gone up and down? That's just the cycles, right? It's like people go, as if it's some surprise that interest rates have gone up. Like they're going to go back down again, and then they're going to go back up. And it's, if we understand those things, it's like, okay, well, where do you, how, is your money in a place, or are you even managing money in a way that is actually going to help you not be stressed during that time? But as you say, it's like I'm getting more about what you're saying between wealth and rich. I didn't read the book, but one is you got everything to show for it, but it's all show. There's no value at the end of the day if hit the fan. Well, I don't know what I can say on a podcast, but if it all hit the fan, then that stuff isn't going to get you through. But if you've got there's money over here, because when interest rates go up, savings interest rates go up too. Like this is what people, if there's money over there, then you're actually going to be making on that. And because your mortgage interest rates don't go up without the savings interest rates going up. So it's for me, it's like, are you stressed? And this is a great way to think about it, is managing money to reduce stress. And another reason for that is the less stress we have, you'll be, because you've just said recently, today, you're really busy. And yet there's other people going, I've heard stories because of what I do. Oh, the market's really down, and I'm having some difficulty over here, and I've always got to have a chuckle at that one. I'm like, the market isn't down, you're down, right? The market isn't down because the person I talked to yesterday who's in your industry is doing great. So there's no market that's down.
The market's only the 6 inches between your ears, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's in your mind.
Yeah, but it's if you do it for stress, and if we go, hey, like you said, those buildings, and that's that's there, and if it's insured properly, then even if something happened to it, then it's like that's how you can. For me, that's how you can tell you're wealthy, because you're not stressed financially.
I think wealth's created over time. Like you can get rich within a year, you can have a great deal or have a big year in business, but wealth's actually created over time. So, Warren Buffett, when he was 30, he was worth, for inflation, he was worth about $1 million. But this book said something like 40% of his wealth has come since he was 65. He's now in his 90s. But, it's built over time. And all these people that sell shares at the wrong time and sell buildings at the wrong time, they're actually minimizing their wealth, and they're actually taking money off the table because they're not going to get as far as they would have if they held. So you've got to hold them. They've all had times when they've got to hold them for a couple of years, and then you come out the other year better off.
Yeah, what does he say? The markets are a financial redistribution system. They take money from those that are impatient and give it to those that are patient.
That's right.
And I think that's what you're saying is
we've seen that
it's a long-term game.
In real estate at the moment, when prices were high and interest rates were low, everyone was jumping on it, And at the moment, when interest rates are high and prices are low, we're at the bottom end of the cycle, people are holding back a little bit. Yeah. But the smart people that have saved money during the boom are in there buying and buying and buying at the moment. And, we're selling properties at the moment under rateable values, under RVs, under valuations. A couple that I've sold lately, they've had valuations done a year ago, and we've actually sold them for 10 to 15% less than the valuations done a year ago. So for the people buying them today, hey, what an opportunity. Like when the market moves again, you're going to pick up that 10 or 15%. So it just makes sense to buy at the moment.
It's just that managing well, isn't it? I think is what we're talking about. Is there's a popular term in investing called contrarians, and this is what people like Warren Buffett are, and other people there. Contrarians do what other people don't, and it's like when everybody's getting manic. So basically, it's for ages and ages. If you look at studies of markets for thousands of years, there are these. There's a value of a company, or like a house, or a company, or any market. Warren Buffett talks a lot about this, but there's a value of it. Like there's an actual value, and investing is about looking at what the value of something is. But that's not what most people do. We get on this craze of the prices are going up and up and up. Oh, it must be a great time. I'm going to get on that bandwagon and not miss out. Again, fear, right? I'm not going to miss out. And at some point, all that's happening is, okay, the value's here, and values, of things do move, but the value's here, but the price is here, and everybody goes, well, I better get in. And so they get in here, but it's always going to be pulled back to the actual value, isn't it? And so then it comes back and it basically crashes. And then the opposite happens too. So for thousands of years, it's like it's a fluctuation between, it goes really, really farther than, more than the value's worth, and then it goes way under what the value's worth. So what's happening is through hype and emotion, when it goes up, people are going, oh, I've got to be a part of that. And then they lose. And then the other contrarians are going, yeah, I see what's going on here. Just save the money and put it aside. And then when the price, the markets, as we say, go below it, they go, that's my time. This is undervalued. I'm going to get it. And that it's just basically, it's a term for what you're saying, but the vast majority of people just for ages old get caught into the hype. It's they choose with their emotions, not with reason. And
they're following, aren't they? Not leading. I mean, I think that the moral of this story is if you're judging success by wealth, you're always going to lose, because success is not judged by how good your life is or how much money you have, and happiness, is it? Like you've got to, having lots of wealth's not going to make you happy.
I'm getting two things out of this conversation, and one is, from listening to what you're saying earlier, is the show of money isn't wealth, right? That's what can get people into trouble. So I guess there is a financial wealth perspective, right? Like it's if we don't have money, it can be a real stress, particularly like if interest rates are going up, it is having a major impact on the costs of mortgages and everything, all loans and everything else. So if we don't have that, but ultimately, look, I mean, the reality of it is that there's a lot of wealthy or rich or whatever, like financially successful people that aren't happy. And I think ultimately, inside wealth is what I talk about the most. But inside wealth brings outside wealth too.
Yeah, I think that wealth, the biggest thing you can buy with money is time. Like if you've got money, you can afford to take 6 months off work and go and travel the world or whatever you're doing, rather than having to go to work every day just to pay the bills. So having wealth's wonderful because it buys you time, and no one, even Warren Buffett, you can't turn back time. You can't just go to the shop and buy the time no matter how much money you've got. But it does give the ability to use your time better. So I think that's the most important thing that you get, not the cars you can go and buy or the houses you can go and buy, but to have the ability to maybe live an authentic life.
Well, you and I talk a lot about living the life you love. And this is something that, for me, it's the start of everything. Like it's are we living the life we love? And, money is certainly one of those things that, it's not, it provides an opportunity. It's one of the key elements to, if we have it and we've managed it well, then we have the ability to say, what life do I love? If it's travel. But the whole other thing of that, I guess it's another part of the topic is that work of finding out, what do I actually love? and then it's a tricky one, but I think it's important to keep both of those in mind, because in life, if we don't have money, we have it's a type of stress that's one of the biggest stresses, right? It leads to relationship breakups. It leads to, unfortunately, sometimes suicides. Yeah, all of that type of thing. And so we need to have it, but it can also rule life, and that's where it gets problematic. Is if we get caught up in it's the everything. There's a point at which we need to remember. I think always need to remember it's a means. It's a means that can allow us to live the life that we want to live. So for me, the other really important thing is doing the work to identify, and that's not always easy, right? We have other voices in our ear about what we should do and how we should be, including, like we're talking about today, the TV and the magazines and all of this. But at the end of the day, we have a life that we're here to love, and I think if it's travel, go, do that. If it's whatever it is, but yeah, it's that tricky balance. Not tricky, but it's the balancing of those for me. That it is understanding that money is necessary for those things, and there's a way to manage it, to get it. But there's also, at the end of the day, a few of our talks here have been about the 5 regrets of the dying. And at the end of the day, I don't like to think of getting to the end of dying, but it's like, are we living the life that we love every day? Are we actually spending this precious time? It's like, I'm with you on that. Like, time is what you don't get back, isn't it? Everything else can be gained and lost, but time is gone when it's gone.
Hey, you were talking to me before, one of the people in your groups with asking you about a question about being authentic. So what was that about?
Yeah, so had a question this week, a little bit of a turn of the tide here, but so I've got a community, which is Expand Community, people getting together, and
which you should sign up to.
What's it? Yeah, cheers, Cameron. Oh, look, it is great. It's a great community. I mean, it's some really switched on people. Going for our greatest lives together. So cheers for that. One of them said, what is authenticity? And so they've been hearing about this, right? We are hearing more about authentic life and what's an authentic life. And so they got on the community and said, what's authenticity? You were the first person I thought about. Get Real came to mind, and I thought, okay, well, this is a chat for Cameron and I here on the podcast. So yeah, I thought about it'd be kind of cool to chat about what is getting real. Like we talked quite a bit about what we were going to name this thing, and there's so many different directions we could go, and it was get real. And so the question I've got on my mind at the moment, based on that, is what is getting real and authenticity, and also what are some of the challenges to doing that? And I thought that might be that's where my mind went. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think I describe being authentic and getting real as knowing who you really are. And I think 99% of people out there, they spend most of their life trying to live up to someone else's expectations or someone else's beliefs or their own beliefs of what they should be doing with their life. And the reality is it's probably not what they deep down want to do. And this is what the book talks about, 5 Regrets of the Dying, is they all get onto their deathbed and they realise that they haven't done what they wanted to do or been with who they've wanted to be, or all of that sort of thing. So the big thing is probably finding an awareness, and it's really, really hard to do, of what you really want to do with your life. Being authentic's being honest with yourself. I think that's the number one thing, is being honest with yourself, because a lot of times we're telling ourselves lies and bullshit, aren't we? Like we just...
Yeah, it's not always easy, is it?
Yeah, it's really tough. It's the hardest thing out there. But once I've seen it happen. I mean, I'm certainly not living my most authentic life. I have moments of it, and I've had times of it, and I can slip back into a lot of ego, and I can slip back into work too much. But I'm working on it. And one of the things I've learned in the last couple of years is that I can now know when I've slipped back, and I know that that's not the right thing for me to do, and I know it's going against what I'm trying to achieve in life.
How do you know it? Like for people to what happens?
I think when I slow down and become present, I can feel it inside me, and I can feel that this isn't really what I'm trying to do, and it's going against my belief of what I'm wanting to do with myself at the moment. It's like a gut feeling. And then it comes through my mind, and I realize, well, I shouldn't be doing that, or I should be saying no to that, and that's probably what it is. It's a really hard thing to describe, but it's really hard work to do it all the time. And I think it's almost impossible to do it all the time because everyone slips back into it because you have a bad sleep and you wake up and you're not feeling 100%, and then you just don't feel that strong sometimes. But the big thing is trying to be aware of it. What do you think?
Yeah, about authenticity. I probably have to explain my definition a bit. This is just because it's something I work with every day, but it's...
You're the master of it.
Well, I'm working on it like everybody else, but yeah, it's something that interests me quite a lot, obviously. But authenticity to me is, there's, I guess, two levels of it, Cameron. So one level, I can't say anything more about it because you've really nailed that for me too, which is finding out who you are and what you love and really pursuing that life. For me, authenticity is also, it's moment to moment and day to day. And it's who we are when we don't have a motive. And so that's what I think I need to explain because that may not make a lot of sense. But we have all of these motives that, this is what I've come to learn, that we don't know that we have necessarily. So I'll give an example because it really starts from the get-go. And let's say that as a child, we were just playing around in the backyard. Kids they don't have a future or a past or anything. They're just, if they're building a sandcastle, that is their whole world. And then let's say, for example, we're doing a tumble or something in the backyard, and when a parent comes out potentially and says, "Oh, that is just amazing! You're amazing!" And all of a sudden we go, "What? Oh, I'm amazing for doing this tumble. You did that so well." And as a parent, we're not thinking twice about it. We think we're encouraging the child, and I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying there's something that happens as well. And so all of a sudden, instead of just being in the moment, we now have a motive. We've got a motive to get the praise because we got praise. We've got a motive to get the praise. So the next time that we do that tumble or whatever it is, we're now all of a sudden looking up to see, did I get that praise again? That's where a motive comes in. So instead of just doing something to do something, instead of just truly being connected, because it's one of the wonderful things about watching children before this happens is they're just purely connected to whatever they're doing, right? To the point where sometimes parents go, get away from that, come back, you got to eat dinner now, or whatever. They're just so engrossed in what they're doing, and it's an authenticity. And then we have something like that happen, and then we get a motive. And then from there, it's the motives become, I want so-and-so to like me. I don't want to get in trouble. So motives can be trying to get something, or it can be trying to avoid something. And so now when we're doing something, so for example, as an adult, someone may ask us, hey, do you want to go to a party, or do you want to do something? And if we're authentic, we don't want to. And it's not about wanting or don't wanting. I say it like this: we're either a yes or a no. But we've been so conditioned by these motives. What do? So, yeah, I'd love to go, right? And inside, this is why I question you on this, because I thought you're on something profound there with the feeling thing. Inside, we know, I don't really want to go. And we've just said yes. That's not authentic. That's saying
you
it.
You can feel it, can't you? As soon as you say yes to something that you don't really want to do, it doesn't feel right.
No, and that's a real key.
Yeah.
Because for me, like this is just so close to my heart, because this is what I'm about every day. That our one job in life is to listen to that, right? Because we're the one that has to be sitting in that chair alone at the end of the day, or in our bed or whatever. Even if somebody's laying beside us, we go to bed alone, if you know what I mean. Like, we're with our thoughts, and we get up with our thoughts, and we're with ourselves every day. It's the most important thing is to listen to that. It's to, and sometimes it's not easy, and it's a practice, to say, because we don't want to be, ruining all the relationships in our life. No, I don't want to go to a party with you. It's usually because, I know for me, if I don't want to go to a party, it's because I don't usually enjoy that type of atmosphere. There's a few times I will, but I love I love a different kind of atmosphere. I love this kind of talk, or, that's the kind of thing I thrive with. But
don't you find when it's going against your authenticity and you don't want to go to the party or something? And I'm big on not going to parties and going out, because as much as everyone thinks, I don't really like socializing. Like, I spend so much time around people every day. When I finish work, I just want to actually have some time by myself, almost. But don't you find when you're trying to go against what you really want to do, you end up coming up with an excuse or a lie, and the people know it's not authentic anyway? You can see when someone's actually saying, hey, sorry, I can't come because I've got such and such on or whatever, but they actually, the truth is not. What do you think about that? We've talked about this before.
It's so important because it's the same feeling inside too for us, isn't it? Yeah. Even though we've got out of the thing that we don't want to do, we know we've just lied.
Yeah.
And instead of, because that's our, it's important because what are we saying? I think this is like, if it's about authenticity, what are we saying? My truth is not okay. My truth that I don't like to socialize is, necessarily is not okay. But that's the message. So I guess the way I'm looking at this is that when we say that to them, we're also sending a message internally at the same time. And the more that we negate ourselves, this is why when people come to me and say, I don't have a lot of confidence, I go, that's not a natural thing. They go, oh, just naturally I'm not confident. That's not natural. That's conditioned. When you were a kid, when you came out of your mother's womb, you didn't have a confidence issue.
Yeah.
So it's the number of times that we do that. This is why this is so important. Authenticity is utmost importance, and we're doing it all the time. Excuse me for harping on social media, but it's such a topic that I think is important. It's even when we're putting ourselves out there as something that we're not, we know it. And even if it looks good on the outside, we know that we're doing that. And what's happening internally, this is why we're seeing it. This is why we're seeing an increase in people that apparently have it all and they're out there, the ones that are the most out there are suiciding and doing that because they're not being authentic to themselves. And so, that feeling is so important because it's a guide. It's a guide. This is your truth. And for me, Cameron, authenticity is really about listening to that. We have to be true to that if we're going to be authentic. And it's not easy.
Listening, but acting. You have to, you can feel it, but it's such a small feeling initially that you just disregard it. So the real key to being authentic is actually, first of all, listening to it, but actually acting with it.
Yeah, because you'll get it back. We're so far removed from it. Is my thing. We've lived our whole life without knowing it, trying to please everybody else or create a persona. We've even forgotten how to listen to it. This is what I know I did.
Yeah.
Like I had to really practice, to go, what is my truth in this moment? But as you listen, I love what you said, as you act, you go, yeah, I'm going to follow that. It gets a bit louder and it gets a bit louder till at one point, I remember a countryman of mine, so my heritage is Indian, even though I was raised in the States and now been in New Zealand for a long time. But Gandhi, he's well known for many things. He said, something to the effect of, I will go against the whole world if it means I'm listening to my own truth. And I may not be getting the words exactly, but you get the point. Like I would negate the whole world if my inner truth told me to do something. So I believe that's why he had the conviction that he had to do some pretty extraordinary, very extraordinary things.
I think I've got many, many, many examples of how when I've gone against what I really wanted to do and you don't bring your best self. Because when you go and do something that you don't really want to do, you're looking at it a different way. So when you show up, you're, not wanting to be there, you're unhappy, you probably feel tired because you don't want to be there. You're just looking how you can leave. You don't want to talk to anybody. So that's what happens. It's a really negative experience.
It's really disrespectful too, isn't it, to the person
that
invited you?
It's actually not treating them with the respect, because when you do something that you want to do, then you will look at it like, I think the emotions that you'll bring to that and the feelings you'll bring to that are happiness and, creativity and, wisdom and energy and all of those positive sort of things. So the more you can spend your life doing the things that you really want to do, you're going to do them in such a better way, aren't you?
Yeah. Oh, there's no question, is there? Because you know it. You were talking about that feeling, but then, what's it like when you do get it? That's a great question, since you could contrast. When you get that feeling that you've done the right thing, then what's it?
Well, it feels, what does it feel like? It feels kind of light, easy, like it's meant to be. And I think I've had, in real estate as a team, we call it flow. So when we've got flow, everything sort of is happening. We're all working together in the right space. We're feeling good. We've got good culture in the office, and the listings come, the buyers come. It's all easy. And that's I call it flow.
And it's from listening. The interesting connection is that comes from listening to yourself, doesn't it? And then if you're at that party not wanting to be there, there's no flow in that.
No.
Listening to you, there's no flow in that.
You're actually just wanting to leave, aren't you?
Yeah.
like you go to a party or go to an event and you're just actually thinking, I want to
Yeah.
get out of here.
As if we said no from the beginning, think about where we could be somewhere else, being in the flow. And I don't, we don't have to be rude, I don't think, doing that either. We can say, I've said to people before, because we're similar in that, like, it's interesting because we're out and about in the public eye, a lot in our work and working with lots of people. But I'm like you. I mean, once that's done, I'm a pretty quiet sort of guy. And I do tend to like we've got together on just social occasions, just quietly sitting and having a chat. And I enjoy that type of thing a lot more than I do the hustle and bustle. And I'll just say to people, if I like them, and usually if they're asking me somewhere, I tend to like them, and I'll say, which is true. I'll say, no, thank you, but no, I don't really want to go to the party. But I won't just leave it. I'll say, would you like to know why? And I'll explain that. I'm like, look, I go there and I'm not in a great place of mind. You know what? I really love hanging out with you. Would you like to have a coffee or, something, or go out and chat? And, and that way they go, oh, okay. Because I'm aware that people might go, oh, well, I'm not doing it to be rude, but how many times do we cross the line and do something to not be rude, but yet we're being rude to ourselves? And that's where I think that's where authenticity isn't. And so two parts too, because what you brought up earlier, some people's say, in my experience, sadly, most of our lives are not authentic because we're doing things not because we truly choose to do them. Many of us, we're doing them because of something else. So you brought that up on a, if you want to speak to that about the larger thing about being authentic with your choices of life, that's also important. So I'm sort of talking about this on a moment to moment basis.
Yeah.
But what do you want to say any more about like authenticity on a big level of living your life, the way you truly want to? Or how did you say that?
I think if you can start doing the small things, then they turn into big things. So like if you start saying no to the things that you don't want to do, there's something else I've read, and I read a lot of stuff, and it's about the powerful no. Like, because we're in a world of yes. Everyone's trying to say yes to everything. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, I want that. Yes, I want that. But like saying a powerful no is so strong, but it's really hard to say no to people, eh? Yeah. Don't you think? Because everyone's you think by saying no to someone that you're going to upset them, or you're going to anger them, or they're going to think that you're a dick or you're not grateful or something like that. But really, they don't understand the what's behind the no.
Yeah. And so what are we doing there? We're getting in their mind thinking, how are they going to react to whatever answer I'm giving? So we're not being truthful then. We're not just simply, who's being truthful? Like, I feel like, don't we owe people truth? Because how terrible is it? Say it's something that you do with them. How terrible is it for them to spend that whole night with someone who doesn't want to be there? Or that
it can't be good, can it?
It can't be good. Like, it's like, instead of just honoring, but I do get it and I understand it, but that's what, with all these things, motives are like, let me get in their mind and think about what they're going to think about my answer and what should I say, instead of, I've been asked a question, am I a yes or am I a no? So I love that, the powerful no. But I guess there's an art to learning how to say no, but most of us, we don't go there. Or if we do, that's become a strategy. We live on the no, and then we're not saying yes when it's time to say yes. So, that's more rare, but it's, all of us are different. And it's a moment of time. For me, it's just such an important topic, because I don't think it's covered very much in success circles and things like that. We're all about achieving things, which I do love, and it's important, but it's like, are we actually connected? Are we connected and can say no, or can say yes, or that it's just, it's everything really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's worth working on, isn't it? Of all the things that I've learned and seen, if you can spend more time in authenticity, then you're going to be probably happier, wealthier, fulfilled. So it's about working towards spend more time in that sort of state, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll get real.
Yeah.
For me, this is how I say it. I'll really lay it on the line. It's our only job.
Yeah.
It's our only job in life.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, it's our only job. Be true to who we are. And if we are, then everything else comes. We've kind of alluded to that, I think, both of us today. It's the only thing that we have to do. And I guess I was sort of quiet on it, but you said, it's worth practicing. To me, it is the number one practice of life, is because what happens if we don't? What are we telling ourselves every day? And then I guess if we circle back around to, and we talked about anxiety, that's what leads to anxiety. That's what leads to,
It's not living your authentic life, is it?
Yeah, because we feel that every day. We feel it every day, and then we are not fulfilled. Like, we end up going, what's the purpose of life? Well, the purpose was to listen to who you are. And this is the thing, is we will serve people far more if we're being truthful to ourselves. And then if we try to run around, being untruthful and pleasing everybody else, we become weaker and weaker and weaker inside as we do that.
You've put it a beautiful way. It's been great sitting down with you. I think we've covered a lot of interesting topics this time, and a lot of the core beliefs of what we really believe in. So I really appreciate my time with you. I know you actually come down here from up the very top of the South Island, so it's a bit of a journey for you to come down here. So I just want to say I really appreciate these times with you.
Oh, likewise, Cameron. Always get on the plane to come down, or if I drive it, I got on the plane this time. Always just get this feeling of excitement about being here and having this chat on a Saturday morning with you. And this has just been great. It's been a really great conversation. So yeah, appreciate it equally.